Hey fellas, I want to talk to you today about Paranoia, the RPG. This is the Mongoose edition of Paranoia, and we are eventually going to work our way to the worst adventure ever written or published. And when I say worst, I mean in a lot of ways it's the best. It is just one of the most horrific. And I think it provides a little bit of insight into some ways that you can use one-to-one timekeeping, which we've talked about. We typically talk about that with respect to advanced Dungeons and Dragons or miniature war games, but it can even be applied to, as we talked about last week, Call of Cthulhu. Can it be applied to Paranoia? Now, those of you that are familiar with this game will be scratching your heads thinking, no way. Well, by the end of this video, I hope that I've given you some ideas for how you can use this old technique that's been rediscovered recently to breathe new life into old games. Bear in mind, because you're changing the way you're running, because you're changing the expectations, you're going to have to change the way the game is played. And we'll talk a little bit about that too. But before we get too deep into that, we should probably introduce those of you that are unfamiliar with Paranoia to the setting and the style of game. From the cover, you can kind of tell a couple of things about it, right? You've got it's not entirely serious. Look at these goofballs running around, and you see the one eye in the computer. It's a satire. Now, it's a satire of a far-flung future where humanity is ruled by lunatics, insane lunatics. Okay, now that I know, we need to explain how it's different from the real world. Well, you're under constant surveillance in the Paranoia universe. Okay, right. We have to talk about why this is different from the real world. In this dystopia, they feed you poison and tell you it's healthy. Okay, I'm really bad about explaining why this is different from the real world, and there's a reason for that. That's because this game is satirizing the real world. It takes the things that we see in the real world and it amps them up to 11. So, setting aside all the jokes, the setting of the game is well, I should probably talk about the fact that, like I said, it's a satire, it's a comedy game. So, what they've done is they've said, look, there's this place called Alpha Complex, and it's a self-contained universe where everybody lives. It is essentially a hive city that is ruled over by an artificial intelligence. At the time this was written in 1983, the big societal fear, at least in the English-speaking world, were communists. So, the underlying theme here, there's a lot to discuss, forgive me. So in Alpha Complex, there is this computer that runs everything. It comes up with the quotas for food. It assigns people where to work, tells people how to play. It tells people what they will enjoy. It micromanages every aspect of their life. The problem is that there are so many different programmers working on this computer that it's insane. If you think 2001, the reason that HAL 9000 went crazy is that he got given two contradictory sets of orders. Imagine if the entire city that you live in, self-contained bottle city, is ruled by HAL 9000, but instead of two contradictory orders, it gets dozens of them every single day. Then when you get your orders from the insane computer, they might not make a lot of sense. Okay, so that's kind of the basic setting, but the way the game is played is a little bit different because there are two concerns that the computer has. There's two things that bother the computer that interfere with a neat and orderly running of what they call Alpha Complex. And the first of those are, I should point out, it's a far-flung future. The way people are created to serve friend computer and to serve each other are through clones. They have cloning vats, and that process of cloning people introduces mutations. So every single person, well, at least every single player character has a mutation. But the computer is supposed to be taking care of human beings, not mutants. So the problem is Alpha Complex is overrun with mutants. Your character is going to have a mutant power. Now that's good because it means that your character will have a leg up on the rest of the citizens and the other characters. But it's bad because having a mutation makes you a traitor. The other issue is that the computer is very concerned about communists, at least in this, in Alpha Complex in 1983, Western-speaking world was fairly concerned with communists overrunning the place. Okay, I'm just going to pause here, right? We all know the jokes that you make here. When they updated the game for, like in the early 2000s, it was terrorists. So there's, oh, you're a commie mutant traitor. I think they updated it for like terrorist mutants, but it's really weird because in both cases, they took a genuine concern and then they tried to make light of it. But be that as it may, the issue with Paranoia is that now you have a group of player characters who are going to go on a mission for friend computer. But every single one of these characters wants to prove you score points by accusing the other guy of being a commie or a traitor or a mutant, or if you can hit the trifecta, a commie, mutant, traitor, then you get a leg up on them. So what happens is this game is called Paranoia because everybody on the team is out to get everybody else. The way the adventures are structured, the computer has something that needs to be done, and the computer will tells your supervisor, hey, and in terms of running the game, the GM will take the role of the supervisor. And I should also take a moment to point out, and this is going to be important later, the way the caste system works in Alpha Complex is based on the rainbow, with infrared are your citizens with no real power. Your character is going to be red and then up through the rainbow color ranks. So the guy in the red jumpsuit that you see here, he's red. And then orange would be a level above him, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, and then ultraviolet are the programmers who are causing all these problems. The game itself, the Mongoose actually came out with a supplement where you could play as the ultraviolet programmers, and that is definitely what we talk about when we mean faction play, because in the ultraviolet version of the game, when you sit down for a one-shot, you're an ultraviolet guy, and you've got your little faction, and you're trying to program resources to achieve what the computer wants, but at the same time stabbing the rest of the players in the back. Now, you might think this is a lot like, this is a friendship killer. This might be the kind of game that leads to breaking up friendships, kind of on order with, along the lines of the Diplomacy, the board game, right? Because stabbing people in the back is the order of the day. Hey, look, it's right there. Paranoia. Now, your characters are called troubleshooters, but what saves it is that it is a comedy game. There's two things. One, it's a comedy game, and two, you have 7 clones. So if you trip up, if you make a mistake and you're accusing one of the other players of being a traitor, and you say, I have evidence because I'm a mutant and I read his mind and I know he's a traitor, then the other guy will say, wait, you're a mutant? And you say, oops, yeah. And so the security will come and they'll kill you for being a mutant. Remember, everyone is a mutant, right? So everybody's trying to back. It's definitely crabs in a bucket. This might be the greatest game written to prepare kids for navigating the real world. But again, as I said, it's a satire. I don't know if I can recommend this game. Certainly don't look at the new one. Like the new one, so it's a comedy game that's meant to spoof and satire the world around us. The new version of the game, literally on page 1, says, by the way, here's what you're allowed to make fun of. Because we all know if there's one thing you don't want to do with comedy, it's push boundaries, right? And oh, by the way, as you can imagine who you're supposed to make fun of, right? There's people wear red ball caps. Certainly not the people burning down cities. Anyway, the reason I don't think I can recommend this, I've tried playing it with strangers a couple of times, and man, it leans so heavily into the slapstick and to create that distance that allows you to play the paranoia aspect. I mean, that's fine, but I gotta be honest with you, there's a whole lot more people out there that think they're funny than are funny. Oh, I'm sorry. I just noticed there's some comments. I can read them. My neck hurts. Why the messed up angle? I mean, I can try. You want to see my? This is just it. This is my desk, guys. And there's really not a lot to see. You should just listen to me because I'm not really showing you anything. I'm just telling you about Paranoia. Rancid asks, is this actually, or is it a premiere? I don't know. I said go live, and it says there's a little red box in the corner right here. You can't see it, but on mine it says live. So I think we're going live. There may be a post or something, but I'm really bad at YouTube. I'm much better at Wargames than I am YouTube, so my apologies. Where were we? Right, so we were talking about the way the game works and about the kind of people that are drawn to this game. It's far more likely that the people who think they're funny but aren't will play this game. The game is also very heavily invested in. The GM is always right. None of these rules matter. I guess I should take time to point out the fact that your character sheet has... this is a very, very slender rule set. The way you actually play the game is... The rules of the game are a lot less important than the interpersonal activities. This is very much a story game. It is very rules light, which it kind of perforce has to be because you're so focused on the interpersonal conflict, the kind of what was that game called where everybody's running around accusing each other of being sus on the space station? Among Us, right? This is kind of like Among Us, the RPG, I guess is one way to do it. There's one way to explain it. So as you can see, you've got 6 stats, and then each stat you get bonuses for skills, and then, just pretty basic stuff. And then the second page shows the secret stuff like, hey, what is your Oh, right, your mutant power. Oh, I forgot the secret society. So in order to like serve as a pressure release valve, Friend Computer created a couple of secret societies. Hey, the malcontents go over here, and I'm gonna pretend like you're um, part of a secret society that's fighting me, but I'm gonna keep tabs on you, right? I'm gonna have my guys keeping out for you, and you know. I could easily make a Ray Epps joke here, but I won't because I'm better than that. Point is, you also have these secret societies, and they have agendas that don't necessarily align with the computer and don't necessarily align with the adventure that you're on right now. And of course, every player is a member of a secret society. So you've actually got that's what it is. You've got your mutant power, your secret society, and then I don't know whether you're communist. I don't know whether your character is a communist or not. But you've got all these secrets, right? And then a perversity, treason points, and if you're doing a really good job, they do have a luck system in here. It's called perversity points, where if you kind of like bite the bullet and like literally take the hit, take the death in a really entertaining way, then the GM will throw a couple of they're like luck points. They call perversity points, but what it does is you roll the die. Oh, I missed by one. You know what? I'm going to spend a point, and now I made it. Okay, so the typical adventure in this will go something along the lines of Friend Computer says, "Hey, well, let's just take a look at this." So this is a supplement called WMD, and it is a series of adventures. And one of the classic adventure in here is one called Hot Potato. And it's very simple. One of the secret societies has got a weapon of mass destruction. Oh, by the way, I should point out this was originally written by Greg Costigan. Man, one of the goats, baby. One of the all-time greats. And if we look a little closer, we can see there's a couple of other familiar names on here. Where is it? I want to show you the receipts. Greg Costigan. Hey, look at this. I don't know who this is, credits and contents, but Aaron Alston, he's the guy that's responsible for the rules compendium for D&D. So that's kind of cool. Ken Ralston, Eric Wujcik, RPG guys should know that. Eric Wujcik, very heavy in the don't tell me the Palladium. He wrote a lot of stuff for Palladium. Anyway, we were talking about Hot Potato. So Hot Potato is really easy. One of the secret societies has a weapon of mass destruction, and they're going to meet another secret society, and they're going to pass it off. Your troubleshooters have been assigned to accompany the armed forces to intercept and get their hands on that weapon of mass destruction. In any other game, this would be a fairly cut and dried adventure. Your team goes there, waits for the exchange, shoots up everybody, and then turns the weapon of mass destruction over to Friend Computer. Why is it different in this? Because remember, your secret society is going to want to get its hands on the weapon of mass destruction because they can use that as leverage themselves. So every single player character, every single player at the table is trying to stab the other guys in the back, is going to try to come up with some kind of hijinks to make the mission a failure. Hey, one of the guys on the team might be a member of the team that's trying to sell that hot potato and wants to make sure that the sale goes through. One of the players on the team might be a member of the secret society that's trying to buy it. And so that member of the team is trying to sabotage the whole operation so that the guys can successfully buy that weapon of mass destruction. But nobody knows what secret societies the other players are in. So that adds a certain level of complications and a certain level of paranoia. All at the same time trying to expose that the other guy's a mutant and a commie, regardless of whether he's a commie or not. So even something as simple as getting to the mission point can be an adventure in and of itself. Because, remember, this is a bureaucratic nightmare. This is Brazil, but with Muppets instead of the dark Terry Gilliam film. And that's where we come back around to the fact that I don't know if I can recommend this to people because there's a disconnect between that slapstick and the dark humor. And while we're talking about commies, remember, dark humor is like food for communists. Not everyone gets it. I love that joke. So now we've spent about 15 minutes talking about Paranoia, the RPG, and it's generally run as a one-shot because you run out of clones pretty quick in this game. But so if that's the case, what value would you get out of playing this game with factions and with one-to-one timekeeping? And that's where I want to turn your attention to what I think is one of the greatest and most horrific and darkest adventures ever produced for any RPG anywhere. There's a lot of edgelords like that. Is it that Grim Jim guy? Who's the Lamentations of the Flame Princess? He has a bunch of negative adventures where there's a dungeon, and the only way to win is to not go in the dungeon. Like, as soon as you enter the dungeon, you've lost. You've destroyed the earth. The only way to play that adventure and succeed is to walk past the entrance of the dungeon. It's a fun read, but it's kind of like an anti-game, right? Because if your first decision is, well, I'm going to try to defeat the evil, and then you cause the evil, it's like, what are we even doing here? All right, so here again we see this is, who this artist? He was prolific back in the 80s and into the 90s. What are we looking at here? We'll see if we can find Jim Holloway. Jim Holloway did a lot of stuff, and he loved a lot of the slapstick stuff. See, this guy is trying to defuse the bomb. There's 2 seconds left, and she snaps her gun behind him. So he's like, oh, right. So it's very wacky hijinks. But the first adventure in here is called Hunger. And you see the happy Chinese peasants, right? See, they got all the food. Yeah, we all know. So excellent news, troubleshooters. Owing to your spectacular success thus far, your food production quota in the next phase of this pilot program has been increased 20%. This is a dark adventure. You don't have a choice. If you're going to play this, you're going to play it. But it is far more along the lines of a Brazil-style darkness than it is the slapstick style. In this, so let's talk a little bit more about Alpha Complex. You don't eat the bugs, you eat the sludge. And in Hunger, we learn how the sludge is made. You've got these big circular vats, and they have 2 substances in them. One is called Hollywood, and one is called Vine. Hollywood is this brine that sits there, and it's a bunch of biotic matter, seaweed or sludge, and then you trail Vine through it, and as the sludge coagulates and thickens, the vine scoops it up, or it attaches the vine, you extrude that, and then you can turn that into... We actually have, I wonder if I can find it in a way that wouldn't be too awkward. Is this better for the angle? Sorry, guys. Because they actually do have an equipment list in here that may come in handy at times. Here we go. Bouncy bubble beverage, choice of flavors, right? You can have plain, you've got something orange, tastes just like something orange. Flavor 71 is illegal. So it tastes really good, but oh boy. If you get caught with it, you're a traitor and you're going to get executed. Vague hint of guacamole. Now, the letters here tell you what you have to be rated to drink it. Like, anybody can have extra classic, but tastes just like something orange. Remember, the guys in the orange jumpsuits, if you're caught wearing orange and you're below that level, then you're a traitor and you're going to be executed. So that's what these little letters are here. You have to be red to have a single serving cone. You have to be yellow to get triple cheese. And then what else do we got here? Crunchers per can. Anyway, so that's kind of the way food works, right? It's like you have your mandatory fun. Now, in the adventure Hunger, somebody gets the bright idea and it's the friend computer says, hey, you know what? Instead of having a room where we've got 12 of these vats, there's a whole lot of extra space in that room. Why don't we just fill the whole room up with the sludge, and then we'll be able to quadruple the amount of food that's produced. Now friend computer is thinking like Nestle. Now it's thinking like an American corporation. There's only so many people in Alpha Complex, and if you're producing enough food for all of them, you don't need to produce more, but more is always better. So friend computer tasks your team with implementing this wonderful new panacea that will allow for a considerable increase in the amount of food that is produced. Great. So your team of troubleshooters are called in, and they're given the task of, look, we've got a stockpile of food over here while this new system creates a whole lot more food. We'll use the stockpile up, and then we can replace it in a day because we're going to be producing 4 times as much, right? Hold your horses. They actually call out, and this is astonishing, right? Can you imagine this? In our day and age, when we trust the scientists are always right, to point out that a guy named Jasper Becker in Hungry Ghosts traces the foolishness of close planting to the fraudulent science of the Soviet Union. T.D. Lysenko was a quack who got the support of Joseph Stalin and ruled over Soviet genetics for 25 years. Lysenko was the equivalent of a man named, well, I can't say it, right? We're not going to go there. But Lysenko made bank by selling a food production system that didn't work. If he lived in the modern day, he would probably be selling injections of things that are worse than it says on the tin. Your guys are working for Lysenko. I'm just going to call the friend computer Lysenko. The system doesn't work. So the whole point of this adventure, and it's very interesting because remember we said that typical adventures are designed for one-shots. Your guys are the lowest of the low. They're a little better than scum. Everybody else has more power than them, and that just keeps them on their toes because they really can't accomplish a whole lot. They gotta BS their way through all these situations. They gotta bluff their way through the bureaucracy, which they can do because the bureaucracy is pretty stupid. Anyway, and remember, everybody in the bureaucracy just wants to please the computer too. So if you can show up and say, yeah, listen, I know it doesn't usually work this way, but it'd be good for you because it's good for the computer, you can bluff your way through. Needless to say, this miracle, and it's called Whirlwind Miracle, I can't remember, one of the running gags through this whole book is everything is WMD. I think it's like Whirlwind Meal Delivery or something like that. WMD, right? Weapon of Mass Destruction. So you got these vats, and we're just going to fill up the whole room, and it doesn't work, and so now we're not making any food. And your job is to prove that the system that doesn't work works great. If you succeed, and it's divided into chapters, your red clearance troubleshooters will be promoted. And eventually, and spoilers, so here we go. So here's a little bit of artwork showing you what's going on. See how they're showing the inspectors. Look at all this food we got. It's full all the way to the back. Well, it's not. It's like one row. And so you get into all these hijinks where you're just working the bureaucracy and trying to prove this thing doesn't work. And if you can prove the thing doesn't works, then you get a bonus. And hey, so what if it doesn't work and everybody dies? You get promoted. It's not your problem anymore. Right? Nothing changes. No one gets punished, and we go on as we always do. I told you this was a satire of at least the West. I can't speak to the rest of the world, but it's certainly how things work here. So once again, we're talking about how communism is stupid and it winds up starving everyone. And can you imagine that in RPG books today? I'm astonished. So we get to the point where you get appointed to a VAT technician, and then eventually you get to the point where if they're successful enough, and it's a typical adventure, but this takes several weeks to spin the thing up, and then your characters are spent trying to keep things together, trying to hold it together just long enough so they can make it the other guy's problem. Eventually, they will be promoted to orange, or I think this is yellow, maybe. And then they will be assigned, hey, look, you get to run the chambers. And look, we are going to assign you 300 red clearance citizens. We're going to give you VAT workers. Now the player characters, instead of being on the bottom rung, they are promoted to where they are trying to manage teams of troubleshooters themselves. And oh, by the way, those teams of troubleshooters are just like your characters, the people at your table. Remember how dysfunctional they were when they were red? Now they're managing teams that are just as dysfunctional. So it's very interesting, and I think this is one of the brilliant aspects of this particular adventure of Paranoia, is it forces you to look at things from the other point of view. Now you're the orange guy giving orders to the red, and now suddenly you realize why the management doesn't care about all the backbiting as long as the work gets done. You get to high enough, and you even have yellow clearance citizens, 1 auto car. Hey, look at that, you get a car, and 125,000 credits. Look at that. And of course, your boss says, and what you realize at this point is that the guy that assigned you the job of proving that the thing that doesn't work does work, he knows it doesn't work. He knows he's like, I don't know how you're going to, at this point you realize, he's like, I don't know how you're going to do it, but if you could get this to work, it's good for all of us. All right, so only a fool would try to micromanage something that's already an unqualified success. So I'm just going to stay out of your way right now and check in on everything's going. I'll check back again when it's time for our first all-over morale tour. And this is where the real inspectors show up. Right? This is where, you have to scramble. Your characters have to scramble, got to put on a dog and pony show. And then eventually what winds up happening, and this is why this becomes very dark, because you follow it through to its logical conclusion. You have implemented Lysenkoism in a population, and your sector is only about 25,000 citizens. But, oh, by the way, they got this idea from a sector that successfully implemented it 2 weeks before you even started. Well, by the time you get to the point where you're like, wait a minute, they were successful, let's go check them out, you're going to find out that that sector is a complete collapse scenario, like full on, somebody beat me to the punch. I think it was Dartmart beat me to the punch. Full on Soylent Green, right? Which, by the way, it would be Soylent Red because only green class citizens can eat Soylent Green. And that's Roy G, right? So that's like level 4 clearance. Anyway, the point is, you get to a point where the only way to prove to these inspectors that it works is to bribe the inspectors. And then there's some hijinks that show up with, it turns out there's a crime family, it's called the McFamily. They skim 1/9 off the top, and then they come and they're like, hey, we want to buy your excess. And if you tell them you don't have any excess, it's not going to go well for your kneecaps. So all kinds of fun hijinks that go in here, but eventually you run out of food. The system doesn't work. So your player characters are going to have to come up with some schemes for, and this is taking place over several weeks, several months. So they may come up with schemes for, well, I'm going to go to the place next door, the sector next door, and I'm just going to steal all their food. And then I can say, hey, look, I got my food. And eventually the whole thing comes crashing down. So, and here's this is funny, right? Oh, we're going to catch this guy because, meat. Anyway, and this is far-flung future, so they do actually introduce the concept of, hey, we do have this machine over here. Oh, another fun little wrinkle. One of the mutations that you can have in this game is Matter Eater. Anything you eat, it will keep you fed. So, hey, good news. If you're a Matter Eater, you can eat all you want. Problem is, you're going to look well fed. And man, there is nothing more suspicious than a fat guy in a famine, right? The people around you are looking for reasons to accuse you of being a traitor, and they're going to say, hey, look, Joe over here still got like 8% body fat. He must be a hoarder, right? So today we call them preppers and we make fun of them, and then when the food system collapses and they were smart enough to skip a meal here, skip a movie there, skip a luxury so that they would have food in the time of collapse, then we can say, hey, not only was he a prepper, but he's also a hoarder. That makes him a traitor because he should be sharing his food with us. Human nature is what it is, and these kind of games like shine a spotlight on it, and we have some fun with it, and we remind ourselves about that kind of thing that goes on, right? So at the end, there's mass starvation, and the whole thing has come collapsing because you were so busy trying to prove the other guys were communists that you wound up like a communist nation. And then they say, yeah, look, we got this machine. And then if you want an out, there is an easy out there that basically goes full Soylent Green. Very dark. I don't know that I'd want to play this like out over a long period of time, except that just as with this video, it does give you lots of opportunity to make fun of the difference between what communism promises and what communism delivers. Although I will say this was a lot funnier back in the 1980s when communism was still kind of a distant threat, and the burning of American cities was hypothetical rather than effective. So let's take a look at the comments here, shall we? Eric Wujik, Bradford Walker informs us that Eric Wujik also made Amber Diceless. Amber Diceless, Chronicles of Amber, phenomenal book series. Amber Diceless, again, another game that would work extraordinarily well one-to-one time. Amber Diceless is just like it says, there's no dice, uses a ranking system, and you play the members of a family of, we'll call them ultra-powerful wizards that control the multiverse. And it's built for faction play. You command entire armies. It would work great in one-to-one time. James Raggy is the Flame Princess guy. That's right. And I think James Raggy is all... Bradford Walker says James Braggy. I think it's James Raggy. And I think he's the guy that wrote a bunch of like anti-adventures. You mean it's not people? Disappointed. classic Paranoia hit, all the dystopia types in the 80s. And as I said, the latest version of Paranoia, it explicitly says, don't make fun of the dystopia that we're living in today. Dartmart asks, how's the eye? We're coming up in about 30 minutes. I'm going to cut it short today. I'm just doing this live stream to get a little bit of content. Remind you guys I'm still here. The eye is doing well. I will need surgery, and there's only like 2 places in the country where I can get it, UCLA and Northwestern is the other one. For those of you that don't know, I took a solid shot to my left eye, and I'm effectively blind in it. It's like looking through frosted glass, but it's just the drapes need to be rehung, and I need to replace the front window. The nerves are fine, so just taking it easy, resting it. I did manage to hit the gym today, so a couple of times. Gotta go real easy though. We're still kind of taking a rest. I also, for those of you that haven't noticed, I went ahead and got a new mug for cleaning my, look at this, Armchair Dragoons. I really like this channel. They do a little bit of everything. They focus a lot more on, 2 things, Hex Encounter, and then, I've mentioned Jim Malzarski all the time. I think he's one of the best at what he does. He does a lot of tabletop sim, and he's going through some of the older Games Workshop stuff right now. Go give him a follow. The other thing I want to do, hey, there's 2, next week I think I'll probably do a full video on this. There are 2 channels that you're not following that you really should. One of them is called Preston Pans. They are doing a week-by-week, kind of a weekly update of a refight of the Jacobite Rebellion. And it's actually by the Battle of Preston Pans, like historical society or museum. And it's interesting because they have a Discord server where the fans of the channel are deciding what the Jacobites do. And then they have a group of historians who are managing the royalists. And just about 15, they fight tabletop battles, but it's really just kind of a 15-minute, here's what's going on in the campaign. Very detailed as far as map movement and forces and why, there's been a couple of Pyrrhic victories. Hey, these guys forced the bridge, but they lost so many Highlanders getting across the bridge that they're not going to have the effect on the battle that, now they can reach the battle, but they're not going to have as much effect as they can. Battle of Preston Pans, look that one up, it's really good. The other one is, I'm going to draw a blank, can't remember what it's called. It's Wargaming in the French, oh man, what is it? It's the interwar World War II years, and it's in the late stage French Empire in West Africa, let's just put it that way. Oh no, that's not good enough for you. It's oh man, another old man moment. So anyway, let me tell you why I like it. Because they have this overall campaign going on, and I think it's largely a narrative campaign, and it's largely historical, where the Italians and the French are going at it. You've got all the locals. I think it's Ethiopia. I think it's the French Ethiopian. So you've got the tribal raiders. So it's kind of late stage colonial era, like really late stage, because we're talking about the 30s. But they really mix things up. You've got some really big battles, and then this last episode they did some naval fights, and they kind of throw some fun little Hollywood stuff in there. Like there is an archaeologist, a Michigan Jones running around. That's not his name. It might be Indiana Smith. I can't remember. Or they might just say, look, forget it. It's Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones is looking for historical artifacts, and he shows up and throws a wrench into the works. It's really good stuff. Wargaming the French in West Africa. Like I said, I'll put together the notes. Next week, maybe we'll do a recommendation for, so some of the smaller channels. And both of these are like 500, 1,000 subscribers. They're doing good stuff. Go look them up. Italy was in Ethiopia. Thank you, Dartmart. Okay, so but what's the other country over in Ethiopia where the French had a significant colony? It's not Algeria. I know for sure it's on the West Coast. And I looked at it just before starting this, but my brain's getting a little tired. But hey, and you say Italy was in Ethiopia, but Italy was active in kind of undermining the French activities in. Forget it. I'll put a link in the comments. In fact, I'll do that for both of them: Battle of Preston Pans and the French one. It's late. I gotta go. Thanks for staying up. Glad you guys come along for the ride. Till next time, I'm praying for you.